Don't no no no. Don't no 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 no. Hey, welcome to my channel. Today we're talking about books, and I'm so excited. I just want to start and say that I'm so excited because I want to be a booktuber. I would say a newfound dream of mine is to be a booktuber. And I'm fully aware that this market is oversaturated. For some reason, everyone is getting into reading at the same exact time that I'm getting into reading. Or maybe that's just like a facet of the algorithm to where like when I get into reading, it seems like everyone else is getting into reading because the algorithm knows that I'm into reading, so they show me people who are reading. Anyway, the free market be like, profit incentive be like, okay, welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk about reading because it's been a new adventure for me. I don't know if I said my name's Luke yet, but my name's Luke. Growing up, I never was like that into reading. I never went through a phase of being super attached to books or like consistently reading for a period of time. I remember my mom reading to me before bed. That's a childhood memory of reading. I remember reading the book Elephant Run as a kid, and I liked that book. I also remember, like, early middle school reading Wonderstruck by Brian Selznick, and clearly I was into it. I was, like, eating it up. But yeah, I remember reading that very quickly, and I was into that book. And then I remember reading the first Hunger Games book, but like over and over again because in middle school we had to do like reading logs, and so I kept just using the Hunger Games and Katniss Everdeen as like my summary and reading log person. I'm gonna close this viewfinder because I keep looking at myself and I feel like it's not as personal as I want to be here. I don't want to be vain. Yeah, so I was never that into reading, and come high school, when we were forced to read, like, actually adultish books, I didn't. I'm graduated from high school now, so I don't think I have to make this a big deal. But I do get scared that, like, my English teachers, who I loved and I thought were great, I don't want them to think I didn't appreciate them just because I didn't read the books. But I didn't really read the books in high school that I was supposed to read. I think I read like chapters of them here and there, and I think I did try like to read a few of the books, but it was mostly like Spark Notes, or like a YouTube video summary of a book, or reading it in class, or I did like some audiobooks here and there when I was feeling extra studious. Anyway, all that to say, I've never been into reading. Like, it's not really my thing. I just didn't get it. I didn't understand how people could do it for extended periods of time. It just felt like a lot of work, and it felt like a lot of effort to put into something that wasn't giving much back. And honestly, I was like pretty anti-reading. I was like, this seems pointless, and like, why even... I don't know, like, what are you even doing? Or I thought everyone who read was pretentious, which is kind of true because I think as I've started to read, I've become more pretentious, but I don't even care. But yeah, I was never into reading. I didn't get it. I didn't like it up until literally the end of high school when I wasn't forced to read anymore. I read a book, which is the first book I want to talk about today, Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. I really loved this book. We had like a final assignment in my IB literature class that was like, join a book club and read any book of your choice or whatever. And we chose this book because it was like pretty short. It's 270 pages, like a fairly readable read. And I was like, you know what? Why not purchase this on Amazon and actually read this book? And I loved it. I spent a day where I was like reading socially with friends. We just like went to a bunch of different parks and read in the parks, and it was incredible. I was like, wow. It was the first time I realized reading could actually be like a form of entertainment. It was the first time where like reading actually captured my attention, and it was actually something I was intrigued by and like something I wanted to continue doing. So yeah, I started reading. I was like, maybe this is like a new thing I can try. And when there's something new that I become passionate about, or I get into, or I like, I go really hard at it for like a burst, like a period of bursting energy towards that thing, and then it usually like dies out, fades out, and becomes a part of my like tool belt kind of thing, where it's like, for example, in 8th grade, I was super into ukulele, and I brought the ukulele to school every day. I would play it in the halls. I had a teacher who was teaching me things on ukulele. I was super into it. And then it just kind of faded out. And I can still play ukulele. I have a ukulele over there, and I can do things, and it's fun, and it's a nice relaxer. But yeah, so that kind of happened with reading, because despite the fact that I hadn't read like a book in the 18 years of life that I lived, in the past 3 months, I've read 10 books, which is crazy and wild. And so yeah, I just wanted to share these books with you because I want to talk about them, and I've decided that this YouTube channel can be whatever I want. There's no one putting any pressure on this YouTube channel being a specific thing, so why not do this? Okay, so the first book, like I said, that I read was Slaughterhouse-Five by Kurt Vonnegut. When I first heard we were reading this for that book club, I thought it was like a series. I thought it was like a part of a series, because, you know, 5, I was like, oh, do I have to read the first 4 slaughterhouses? But it's not a series. This book takes place in World War II. It follows Billy Pilgrim, a character who is described as unstuck from time. And so we get to like see his whole life, but we see it in like fragments that are not in chronological order. So it'll jump between his experience as a war prisoner in World War II and his experience as a suburban dad, as well as his experience in this like sci-fi alien abduction thing. But it was fascinating. It was super like riveting and page turner because it jumped so much. So you're like, where are we? You have to like get yourself to not be disoriented because you're in a new place, you're in a new time, you're at a different part of his life. It's just very interesting and very engaging. It's got some like incredible messages about like war and PTSD and all the things like that. There's some great quotes in here. Kurt Vonnegut, out of the 10 books that I've read these past 3 months, is my favorite author. I think he's really funny, he's really dry, but he's also super like intellectual and philosophical, and I think the mixture of like a dry humor and almost a self-aware humor with like philosophy is very much in my heart. It's very much in the vein of things that I like. I sustain that that's like one of my, if not my favorite book that I've read so far, just because it means so much that it like got me into reading, and I recommend that book to everyone. I think it's wonderful. I think it's great. Yes. I feel like a real booktuber. The next book I have, I actually don't have on my person. I don't have it with me. I don't have it in a bookshelf because I'm letting a friend borrow it because I'm a good person. But I did make this little note card to remind myself that it's the next book. And that book is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This is a beefy boy. This was quite a bold decision for me to read this book as the second one in my new experience as a reader. I think it's like 500 pages, and it was definitely a doozy to get through for me as someone who like didn't read a lot. There was definitely a lot of parts that were slower, and for a period of time I was like, I don't know if I'm actually gonna be able to finish this, and like maybe I'm not that into reading because I'm still feeling out the reading thing, okay? But I did end up finishing it. I went on a trip to New Hampshire and I finished it, I believe, while I was there. And it was wonderful. All the like slow parts of it became so much more valuable by the end. And that was the first time I realized that like, I don't know how satisfying it is to finish a book because that one was so long. It felt like I like conquered it, and it felt all worthwhile because the ending kind of dug up these old memories that feel like actual memories because it was in such a slow part of the book. If that makes sense at all, I don't know. It also switched between characters every chapter or so, and so I enjoyed that because it kept things, again, engaging, page turning, the whole, you know, all those words that are on the covers of books is like, as like compliments from the New York Times or whatever. But yeah, it was fantastic. I really liked that book. I'm proud of myself for reading it. It takes place in World War II. We follow two characters, Werner and Marie Laure, I believe. I don't know how to say her name exactly. It's French. And she is blind. And so she has this whole thing where she's like learning the city and learning to navigate the city by herself, and that's fascinating. And then Werner is a German kid. He grows up in Germany as like the Nazi regime is rising to power, and so it's just fascinating. I won't give too much away. It was really good. It was a good time. Well, it wasn't a good time. It's like a really sad book, and I think I definitely cried at the end, and there's pieces that are like horrifically sad, but I really like that. I like being ripped to pieces by a book. Keeps me entertained on a Saturday night, what can I say? The next book I read was The Stranger by Albert Camus. I don't know how to say names. This, I believe, is originally a French book that was translated, and I don't know. So the reason I read this was because it was the book I had ordered that was small. After All the Light We Cannot See, I wanted a small book, and this is 120 pages, and I was like, oh, I could read that in like a day or two. Oh my god, it took me so long. It took me like 2 weeks just to read 120 pages, because it's a very like mundanely written book, which I understand is the whole point. Basically, we follow this guy, and he's like very dry, but not in like a dry humor way. It's just like everything he describes exactly as it is, very straightforward. He's like, and then she was there, and I felt good. Which is the whole point, I think, because we're like following this sociopath, and to get inside of his head, I understand how it's interesting, I understand how it's important, and like, I get why it's literarily good, or like necessary, I guess, but it wasn't for me. I discovered that, and it's fine. And I do feel bad because it's like a winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature, and I didn't like it, so it's like, oh, do I have bad taste? But it's fine. I understand it. I get it. It just wasn't for me. So thank you, Albert. I'm never going to read you again. The next book I read was actually a non-fiction book that I got sent to me by my school, because it's like a book that the School of Communications at my college is going to be looking into a lot this fall, I think, and they sent me a hardcover copy of it, and I was so excited, and so I like read it. It's called Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. It's about, it applies the Indian caste system to the U.S., and it talks about the perils of being in the subordinate caste, and justifies her thesis that Black Americans are the subordinate caste in our social caste system. Fascinating. So good. So interesting. What I really loved about this book is that it's not just like an anecdote thing, or it's not just a research paper. It's like beautifully woven together, where she has these anecdotes from specific historical stories. She has stories from her own life. She has stories of friends. She has stories of like something that happened 2 years ago. But she also has so much evidence and so much like research in this book. And so this like last, what is that, like, I don't know, like sixth of it, or like fifth of it, quarter of it is all bibliography, and so there's so much evidence and research put in here, so many references. She talks about the Nazi regime, and she talks about how the Nazis looked to U.S. law when they were making the Nuremberg laws of interracial marriage, and it's just fascinating. So much interesting stuff in there. I think this should be like read in every single American history class, because I think it's just really important, and I'm excited to discuss it at college. So yeah, I read that. Very happy to have read this one too, because it was my first nonfiction, and it was kind of long. Like, it was like almost 400 pages of like book. I didn't read the bibliography. Sue me. I just didn't know how, and I didn't want to. And so after that like thick nonfiction, I was like, I need some fun times, and so I went back to my boy Kurt Vonnegut, Curty boy, and I read The Sirens of Titan, which is his sci-fi book, and I loved it. I loved it so much. This book is super conceptual and very weird and very strange, and I don't know, I think you definitely have to be a certain person to enjoy this, but I think I am that certain person. It's a sci-fi book, but it's also deeply philosophical. And again, it's got his like dry humor style of writing. I just love the way Kurt Vonnegut writes. I don't know, it feels like you're diving into an inside joke. Like every time I read him, he like references back to earlier things, and it's all like melded together, and it's just very fun. It's a very fun thing to read. I find it very engaging. The end, I think like most books I read, when I'm getting close to the end, I like kind of not cry, but I like tear up. I'm like, wow. I did not tear up when I read The Stranger. This book is fantastic. Highly recommend. You definitely have to be a certain type of person. You have to be like me. But yeah, I want to read more Kurt Vonnegut. Yay! The next book I read was The Alchemist. You can't see any of these because it's too overexposed. But The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho? I don't know. I don't know if that's how you say his name. Apologies if I said it wrong. I really loved this book. I really did. I think this is a classic. I'm not sure. It might be newer. I literally don't know. This is very much like a English class read. I was initially a little bit hesitant because I was like, I don't know. But I really liked this. It was like very earnest and very optimistic, and I read it at a time that was like, I don't know, I could relate a lot to this book because it's about following your dreams and it's about pursuing your personal legend. I made a whole video where I was referencing this book because, you know, I'm about to enter into my college years and I am attempting to pursue my dreams. I just really liked this book. It was just very relatable. It's very warm. It feels like a campfire storybook, and so I liked that a lot. It was very comforting, very wholesome, very sweet. The next two books that I read, and I actually don't have these on me because I borrowed them from a friend, and I read them really quick because I had to get them back to the friend before the friend left for college. Anyway, I read Song of Achilles and Circe, both by Madeline Masters. These were wonderful. These are fantastic books. I think these are like very popular and very well known as wonderful books, and so I don't know how much I can add to the conversation. Song of Achilles follows Patroclus, and it's this like Trojan War gay love story, and it's wonderful. They start as like kids and you follow them as they like fall in love, and it was just like, again, such an earnest portrayal of love. All the descriptions of the way that they looked at each other. Madeline Masters is like such an in-depth and like magical writer. She just captures emotions like no other, and she captures the like awkwardness of love and the awkwardness of feeling in love with someone without knowing how they feel about you, and it's just wonderful. It's a great romance, and obviously it's an important book, and yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. It was exciting. There was like a lot happening, and Trojan War, Greek mythology, good stuff. It was fantasy, but it was, again, like soft fantasy. It didn't feel... I don't know why I said again, because I haven't talked about soft fantasy, but it didn't feel like too lore-y. Like I didn't have to get too into the lore and keep track of things, because it was just like a real-world, really grounded story, but in this Greek mythological world. The next book I read by Madeline Masters was Circe. I really enjoyed this book, actually. It follows Circe, who is the daughter, or a daughter of Helios, the sun god, and she gets exiled to this island to live privately by herself for the rest of eternity, and we just follow her. She becomes a witch, and as she encounters all these Greek heroes, and as she has a child, and all this like drama, all this big life stuff, and I just loved it. It was, again, a very philosophical look at like the world and eternity, and it had some commentary on religion and who God is, who gods are, what the pride or ego of a god looks like, or I don't know, I just love that type of commentary, especially as someone who has taken a step back from the evangelical church. Haha. I really liked a lot of the discussions she had about God. Also, this is a side note, Sirens of Titan. This book had a ton of religious commentary, which I loved so much. It talked about like God being different, or a God who doesn't care about what you do. And there's this whole religion that started about the apathetic God who doesn't care about what you do. Ultimately, it is up to us to love each other. We should feel responsible for loving each other because love is good and because we are motivated by ourselves rather than being motivated by this higher being who is looking down on us and scrutinizing everything we do. Fantastic. Good religious commentary. Wonderful. The next book, and this is a book that I literally finished this morning. It's called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Haig? I don't know. This is like apparently one of the biggest books right now, and I really enjoyed it. I liked it a lot. We follow this girl, Nora, as she adventures through a bunch of different potential lives that she could live, that she might have lived if she did one thing differently. I had mixed feelings about this book because this girl, Nora, is depressed and she has anxiety, and there's a slight undertone of like the message that you don't need antidepressants, you just have to shift your perspective. And I have issue with that perspective sometimes. Well, most times. I don't think that's always true for everyone. But I got to talk to a friend about this book, which again is my favorite thing about books, is talking to people about them. I had a newfound appreciation for this book in that I think there's a lot of commentary on imposter syndrome. I don't know, I think it is a good perspective to have, to like take a second, look around at your life, appreciate what you're doing, appreciate that you're living life, and it's very earnest, very feel good. It's got a very optimistic ending. And so I like this book a lot. It wasn't my favorite. I understand why it's so loved, and I feel, again, kind of like how I felt about The Stranger, like, wow, everyone really loved this book, but I read it in 2 days, and so clearly it's got something good going for it. But yeah, that's The Midnight Library. Finally, a book that is like almost done for me. It's called An Ambulance is on the Way. This is a series of short stories that all kind of center around like different like Jewish suburban dads. So it's very slice of life, pretty mundane. This is a book that I picked up in a airport on the way back from Oregon, and so I got like halfway through it and I was like, okay, I just have to like power my way to the end of this book. And so that's what I'm doing. So this is my 10th book. It's not done yet, but it will be soon. I don't know. I'm not in love with it, but I'm definitely going to finish it. Da-da! Yeah! Now, real quick, I want to run you through my TBR. Okay, so these are my next books that I'm reading. I am going to be reading Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami next, because I've heard wonderful things. And then I have The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. I have The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I have The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. I'm so excited for those books. I'm so excited to get on to my next book. And yeah, honestly, dude, I just wanted to make this video for myself to talk about books because it's fun for me. But as a side motive for making this video, I just want to encourage you to read. I literally never thought I would be someone who would be this into books, but I have found it so immersive and magical, and I feel like a like weird librarian lady in like an elementary school for saying that, but truly there's something about books that just makes me feel productive, and it makes me feel like I can think deeper. It makes me feel like I can articulate my thoughts better. If you're someone who likes to be intellectual or likes to have conversations about deep things or whatever, I think you would love reading, because I was always someone who enjoyed existential thought, but now I feel like I'm way better suited to get myself into some existential thought because I'm backed up by these 10 books that I read this year, and that list is just going to keep growing. It's also like a very special self-care thing where like I can read by myself and feel like I'm surrounded by 20 people that I'm reading about, you know? Like I feel really content being alone if I'm reading a book. I also feel productive, you know, if I'm having a day where maybe I'm falling a little bit into some depressive tendencies, it's like, well, I'll just grab a book. It's a very easy way to make me feel like I'm actually doing something and getting something done. Books have been such an important thing for me over the past 3 months that I felt obligated to share with you. Sorry if this is annoying. I know everyone's getting into reading now, so I'm not an original thought maker. But this was just so fun for me. Anyway, thank you for letting me be a booktuber for a little bit. I am sweating just because I've been so excited to talk about these books, and so I've been like moving a lot, and like I've been a little bit nervous, like what if I don't say everything right? But it's fine. This was a pleasure for me. I hope to be the next big booktuber. Try reading books. It's a great time. It's a wonderful little guy. Okay, I love you and I love you. Goodbye. I need to get a thumbnail.
Yeah, a thumbnail.
Haha, I feel like a booktuber. Wow, I love being a booktuber. This is so fun. Is this my future? Okay.